In a quiet town where life runs slow and hardship is just part of the daily grind, Daniel, a widowed mechanic struggling to raise his son alone, is just trying to survive. Every morning is a battle against debt, loneliness, and the lingering pain of loss. But one rainy night changes everything. When Daniel stumbles upon an injured little girl on the side of the road, instinct kicks in. He saves her, not knowing that she's the daughter of one of the richest, most powerful women in the country, a billionaire who's gone to great lengths to keep her identity hidden from the world. As Daniel opens his modest home to the girl, and later to a mysterious woman claiming to be her aunt, his life begins to change in ways he never imagined. But secrets can't stay buried forever, especially not when the truth could destroy the fragile new bond they've built. When love, trust, and worlds collide, Daniel is forced to confront what really makes a family. This is a story of heartbreak and healing, of lies and second chances. What happens when an ordinary man unknowingly rescues the heiress to a fortune, and her billionaire mother comes to collect? The shrill buzz of an alarm clock sliced through the dim light of dawn, jerking Daniel Hayes awake. His hand slapped at the snooze button, missing it twice before silencing the noise. Another day, another chance to hold everything together. His small house creaked as it settled in the morning chill. He swung his legs over the bed, rubbing the back of his neck as he glanced at the frame photo on his nightstand. Him, his late wife, and their son, Eli, back when life felt full. He allowed himself a moment of stillness, then stood with a weary sigh and padded to the hallway. "Eli," he called out, banging lightly on the door. "Up and at 'em, buddy. We're already running late." A groggy voice answered, followed by a thump. Daniel smiled faintly. At least some things were predictable. In the kitchen, he moved with the practiced rhythm of a man used to multitasking under pressure, flipping pancakes while packing Eli's lunch, checking the mechanic shop schedule on his phone, and eyeing the overdue bills that loomed like vultures on the counter. Rent, utilities, medical expenses, all reminders that love alone wasn't enough to pay the price of survival. Eli stumbled in, hair tousled, one sock missing. "You look like a hedgehog," Daniel said, tousling his son's hair. "Eat fast. I've got Mrs. Jensen's transmission at 9 and no time to be late." They sat at the wobbly kitchen table, a relic from a garage sale, where Daniel handed over a syrup-drenched plate. "Do we still have to do the field trip today?" Eli asked, poking at his food. "You said we'd go to the museum." Daniel paused, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Not this week, bud. I've got too much work and not enough hands." Eli didn't argue. He simply nodded, the disappointment written across his face like a billboard. Daniel's chest tightened. His son had inherited more than just his curly brown hair. He'd inherited resilience, learned far too early, but no kid should have to wear that kind of armor. They rode to school in Daniel's beat-up truck, the engine grumbling with every turn. At the drop-off line, Eli grabbed his backpack, paused, then leaned over to hug his dad. "You're doing good, Dad," he whispered, voice small. Daniel didn't know what to say. He just nodded and watched his son disappear into the building. Back at Hayes Auto Repair, the scent of oil and rubber welcomed him like an old friend. The shop wasn't much. 3 bays, 1 hoist, and a radio that only played country songs. But it was his. Sort of. He still owed the bank 12 grand and change. The day slogged on. Brake jobs, coolant flushes, muffler repairs. Hands stained black, back aching, Daniel kept his head down. It was honest work, and it kept food on the table. By sundown, he was exhausted. His hands trembled slightly as he scrubbed them clean with gritty soap. Another day survived. He climbed into the truck, ready to pick up a frozen dinner and maybe give Eli a surprise card game before bedtime. But as he turned onto the winding road just past Willow Creek, his headlights caught someone, on the side of the road. He slammed on the brakes. There, lying in the ditch, was a little girl, barefoot, dirty, motionless. His heart stopped. "Hey, hey," he called, leaping from the truck and rushing to her side. She moaned softly, her face streaked with dirt and tears, a small scrape bleeding from her forehead. "It's okay," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "You're safe now. I'm gonna help you." She looked at him, eyes wide and dazed, and whispered, "Mom, Clara." Then she passed out. Daniel didn't think twice. He scooped her up carefully, cradling her against his chest. She was light, too light, and shivering. He drove like hell to the hospital, hands clenched on the wheel, mind racing with questions. Who was she? What had happened? Where was her family? He didn't know it yet, but that night, something inside him shifted. What began as a fractured morning was about to become a life forever altered. And not just his own, because Daniel Hayes had just saved a girl who belonged to a world he couldn't begin to imagine. And somewhere far away, a powerful woman was about to realize that the daughter she lost had been found by the last man she ever expected. The ER was swarming with fluorescent lights, distant beeping monitors, and the muffled shuffle of tired feet. Daniel burst through the emergency doors, cradling the girl tightly against his chest, his shirt stained with dirt and blood. A nurse looked up from her station and froze for a beat before snapping into action. "We need a gurney here. Possible head trauma. Child victim," she shouted. A team of medical staff rushed forward. Daniel reluctantly laid the girl on the stretcher, watching as they wheeled her away, the curtain swallowing her small, fragile frame. "Sir, are you her guardian?" a nurse asked as Daniel tried to follow. "No," he said, breathless. "I just found her on Aspen Trail. She was lying in a ditch, alone." "Do you know her name?" He hesitated. She said one word before she passed out. "Mom and Clara. That's all I got." The nurse nodded, scribbled something on a clipboard, and guided him to a small waiting area. Daniel sat down, heart still hammering in his chest. His hands trembled. The images replayed, headlights, her limp form, that whisper. Who was Clara? And why was that girl alone in the dark? A police officer arrived shortly after, asking questions Daniel barely had answers to. He gave them everything he could, the location, the condition she was in, and the fact that she seemed around 7 or 8 years old. No ID, no backpack, no explanation. As the hours crawled by, Daniel found himself pacing the hallway. His phone buzzed, a missed call from Eli's after-school program. He called back quickly, apologizing for being late, and explained there'd been an emergency. The staff, who knew Daniel well, agreed to watch Eli for a bit longer. The nurse returned finally. She's stable, mild concussion, a few bruises, some signs of exposure, but no broken bones. You saved her life. Relief flooded through him like a wave. She keeps asking for her mom, the nurse added. No one's come forward yet. Daniel stepped into the dim hospital room. The girl lay in bed, bandaged and hooked up to a saline drip. Her eyes fluttered open and locked onto his. "You came back," she said softly. "Of course," he replied. "You scared me back there." She gave a weak smile. "I'm Sophie." "I'm Daniel," he said, sitting in the chair beside her. "Do you know your mom's phone number? Anything that can help us reach her?" Sophie's face tensed. She said to stay hidden, not to talk to strangers, but you don't feel like a stranger. That both comforted and unsettled Daniel. The doctor entered and spoke quietly with Daniel. There's no missing person report yet, but we'll keep checking. Social services will get involved soon. In the meantime, she'll need observation for at least 24 hours. Daniel nodded, but something inside him twisted at the idea of leaving Sophie here alone. She didn't just need medicine, she needed someone who cared. And for reasons he couldn't explain, Daniel already felt responsible. The next morning, Daniel returned to the hospital with fresh clothes and a coloring book from the gas station gift aisle. Sophie's face lit up when he entered. "You came back again," she said, shy but happy. "Of course, I brought you something." She giggled as she flipped through the book, already more animated than the night before. Later that afternoon, a woman from Child Protective Services arrived. Dressed in a gray blazer with a matching tone to her voice, she introduced herself as Ms. Allen and began evaluating the situation. "You understand, Mr. Hayes, that while we appreciate your help, Sophie can't stay in your custody without authorization. We'll be moving her to a temporary placement." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Wait, she's comfortable here. I have a safe home. My son's her age. They could keep each other company." Ms. Allen studied him, noting his grease-stained boots and tired eyes. "Are you her relative?" "No." "Then legally your hands are tied." That night, Daniel drove home heavy-hearted. Eli was already asleep, but Daniel stood by his son's bed for a long while, wondering what kind of world takes a child from someone who simply wants to help. 2 days passed, then 3. No sign of Sophie's family. On the 4th day, Miss Allen called. "The temporary foster family backed out. Sophie keeps asking for you. Would you consider emergency foster placement?" Daniel didn't hesitate. Yes. Paperwork was filed, background checks rushed, and just like that, Sophie was living with Daniel and Eli in their little house. Eli was cautious at first, unsure of this sudden guest, but children are wonderfully elastic. Within hours, they were chasing each other in the yard with water guns, laughter echoing down the street. Sophie fit in too well, as if fate had quietly rearranged the pieces of their lives to make room for her. And still, no one came looking. Daniel stayed up late searching online, combing news headlines and missing persons databases. Nothing. Who was this little girl? And why was there no one out there looking for her? 50 stories above the city, behind walls of glass and granite, Clara Harrington stood frozen, staring at the paused security footage. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. "Sophie," she whispered. Her daughter's image flashed on the monitor, frail, dazed, carried in the arms of a man Clara had never seen. He wore a mechanic's uniform, drove a battered pickup truck, a name tag partially visible, D. Hayes. The private investigator cleared his throat. "Found her footage from a local hospital security cam. She hasn't been officially reported as missing, but it appears she was injured. That man brought her in." Clara clenched her jaw. "Why wasn't I alerted? You told us to cut off all location trackers." Clara turned away, jaw tight with guilt. After the kidnapping threat 6 months ago, Clara had hidden Sophie away, hired a private caretaker, and retreated behind firewalls and fences. She thought she was keeping her safe, but the caretaker had vanished 3 days ago, the car stolen, leaving Sophie exposed. Now a stranger had her, one with grease on his hands and no idea who she really was. "I want everything on him," she said coldly. Daniel Hayes, his record, his finances, everything. And Sophie. Clara hesitated. I want to see her, but not as myself. The assistant blinked. You mean? Yes. Set up a visit. I'll go in as her aunt. Keep my name out of it. For a moment, Clara allowed herself a breath of hope. Her daughter was alive, safe, but she also knew the cost of trust. She built an empire on power, deception, and control, and now the only person she could rely on was a stranger with oil-stained hands and a quiet strength she didn't understand. Clara adjusted the simple cardigan draped over her shoulders as she stepped out of the Uber. The house in front of her was smaller than she expected. A single-story, faded yellow home with an overgrown lawn and a leaning mailbox. A chain-link fence framed the yard where a couple of children's toys sat forgotten. It wasn't the kind of place she ever imagined her daughter staying in, much less thriving, but she'd seen the photos. Sophie smiling again, playing with another child, Daniel's son, safe, happy. Her alias, Carla Monroe, was already on the CPS records. She'd filed distant aunt paperwork quietly through legal channels, never allowing her full identity to leak. No headlines, no Harrington Tech, just Carla, the concerned aunt. Daniel opened the door with caution, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw her, his expression hardened slightly. You must be Sophie's aunt? Clara nodded, schooling her expression into something warm and humble. Yes. Thank you for taking care of her. I didn't know she was even missing until social services reached out. It's complicated. Daniel raised an eyebrow but stepped aside to let her in. Clara was hit immediately with the scent of motor oil, cinnamon, and something that could only be described as home. A cluttered but cozy living room, a worn-out couch, and framed drawings on the fridge. Sophie came running. Aunt Carla! Clara kneeled, arms open, tears stinging her eyes as she pulled her daughter close. I missed you so much, Clara whispered, burying her face in Sophie's hair. Daniel watched them quietly, noting how natural Sophie looked in this woman's arms. But something about Carla didn't sit right with him. She was polished in a way small-town people weren't. Her hands were too smooth, her speech too precise. Still, Sophie needed her. That was what mattered. Over dinner, Clara stayed quiet and observant. She watched Daniel move, setting the table, pouring juice, answering Eli's endless questions, with the practiced grace of a man who had made peace with doing it all alone. She found herself admiring him, and that unsettled her. Later that night, as the kids watched a movie, Daniel stood in the doorway beside her. She's doing better, he said, but she still has nightmares sometimes. Keeps asking me to stay by her bed until she falls asleep. Clara looked at him. You've done more for her in 2 weeks than some people do in years. There was a long pause before Daniel spoke again. Are you planning to take her back? Clara hesitated. Eventually, but not yet. I think she needs this, whatever this is. He nodded. She didn't know it yet, but whatever this is was already becoming something much harder to walk away from. The days began to blur. Aunt Carla stayed longer than she meant to. At first, a weekend, then a week, and now 2. She claimed it was to monitor Sophie's recovery, but deep down, she knew it was something more. She was seeing the world through her daughter's eyes. Backyard picnics, Saturday pancakes, late-night laughter. A world Clara had never belonged to, but now she wanted to. Daniel was cautious at first. He didn't pry into her past, but the questions lingered just behind his gaze. Who was this woman really? Why didn't she call sooner? Why did Sophie never mention her before? They sat on the porch one night, a cool breeze settling over the lawn. "You're different than most people who walk into my life," Daniel said, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. Clara raised a brow. "Because I showed up in heels in a rental car?" He smirked. "Because you don't talk much, but when you do, it matters." She studied him carefully. "You don't trust easily, do you?" "Not anymore," he said plainly, "and definitely not with kids involved." Clara's heart twisted. "What happened?" "My wife, cancer, took her fast, left me with a 5-year-old and a half-empty bank account. I had to learn how to keep going because no one else was going to do it for him." Clara looked away, ashamed. "You're stronger than most people I know." He glanced at her then. "What about you? What's your story?" Clara's throat tightened. The lie was ready. She'd practiced it 100 times, but she didn't tell me. Instead, she said softly, "I've made choices I regret. I thought I was protecting Sophie, but maybe I was just hiding behind control." Daniel didn't press. He didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. That night, Clara stood outside Sophie's door, watching her daughter sleep in a room filled with warmth. Posters on the walls, a shared nightlight with Eli, a stuffed dog under one arm. She realized for the first time in her adult life that money couldn't buy this kind of peace, and it terrified her how much she wanted to be a part of it. Back in the towering Harrington Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. Clara's prolonged absence had not gone unnoticed. Board members were getting anxious, shareholders wanted answers, and whispers of her disappearance were beginning to stir among tech media outlets. Inside her penthouse office, her assistant Marcus paced as Clara returned briefly to check in. "You've been off-grid for nearly 3 weeks, he hissed. "You think no one noticed the CEO of a Fortune 100 company vanished?" "I didn't vanish," she snapped. "I was with Sophie." He lowered his voice. "Then why all the aliases and secrecy? You know this is going to explode if the press gets wind of it." Clara ran her hands through her hair, exhaustion shadowing her features. "Because for the first time in years, Sophie is happy. She's smiling, laughing. She's normal, and I'm not ready to rip that away." Marcus studied her. "You're falling for him," he said flatly. Clara didn't answer. He handed her a tablet. "You need to read this. One of the hospital interns leaked a photo. Paparazzi are sniffing around Aspen Trail. It's only a matter of time." Clara's stomach dropped as she looked at the headline. "Mystery child, billionaire heiress. Speculation grows around Harrington CEO's secret life." Sophie's face was blurred, but the implication was clear. "I'll handle it," Clara said, voice like steel. "How?" She stared at the image, then at the life she was about to lose again. "By telling the truth, all of it, but on my terms." She would go back to Daniel, not as Carla, not as a guest, but as Clara Harrington, the woman whose secrets were about to unravel everything. The air was different that morning, heavy, thick with unspoken truths. Daniel knew something was off the moment he stepped outside and saw the black SUV parked across the street. A man with a telephoto lens ducked just a little too slowly. The whisper of danger, real or imagined, coiled around his gut. Inside, Sophie and Eli were building a fort out of sofa cushions. Clara, or rather Carla, was unusually quiet, sipping coffee without looking up. Daniel decided to confront her, not gently. "Who are you, really?" Clara's hand froze around the mug. She looked at him, the facade slipping. "My name isn't Carla, it's Clara, Clara Harrington." Daniel blinked. "As in Harrington Tech? She nodded. Sophie is my daughter. I was trying to protect her. I didn't expect to find all of this. All of what exactly? His voice was calm but cold. A mechanic's house? A kid with holes in his sneakers? Is this a novelty for you? Clara flinched. No. I stayed because you made her feel safe. You gave her something I couldn't. Daniel took a step back, wounded. And what was this? Research? A billionaire's social experiment? No, Clara's voice cracked. It was real. You were real. There was a long pause. Sophie's laughter echoed from the other room, oblivious. I trusted you, Daniel said softly, and you lied. Clara left that night. No goodbye, no explanations to Sophie. Just a tear-stained letter left in Daniel's mailbox. The story broke the next day. Every news outlet in the country ran the headline, Secret Daughter of Tech Billionaire Found Living with Small-Town Mechanic. Paparazzi descended. Reporters camped outside Daniel's house. Child Protective Services reopened Sophie's case. Her stay was now under review. Daniel had no words for Sophie when she asked why her Aunt Carla was gone. She had to go, was all he could muster. But inside, he felt betrayed, not just by Clara's deception, but by how deeply he missed her. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel opened the door to find a familiar face, Ms. Allen from CPS, flanked by a county officer. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, she said, voice gentle. We have to take Sophie. Her legal guardian has made arrangements. Daniel stepped outside, shutting the door behind him so the kids wouldn't hear. Please, he said, voice low. She's been through enough. You can't just rip her away again. I don't want to, Ms. Allen said sincerely, but Clara Harrington's lawyers are involved now. We're out of options. Sophie didn't cry when she was told. She just clung to Daniel and whispered, Please don't forget me. He held her like his own daughter, because she was. That night the house was quiet. Eli asked if Sophie was ever coming back. I don't know, Daniel admitted, but he wasn't giving up. He took time off from the garage. He wrote a letter to the county court, then another. He gathered affidavits from neighbors, teachers, the after-school program. Everyone attested to the same thing. Daniel Hayes might not be family by blood, but he was family in every other way. What began as one man fighting for a little girl became a small-town movement. Meanwhile, Clara sat in her penthouse, watching the chaos unfold on TV. Lawyers urged her to reclaim the narrative. PR teams drafted public apologies. But all Clara saw was her daughter's face, heartbroken and confused. She had tried to control the world again, and in doing so, she had broken the only good thing that had ever happened to her. She picked up her phone and dialed Marcus. I'm ending it, she said. Prepare a press conference. I'll speak to the world, but not as CEO. Marcus sounded hesitant. Then what? As a mother. The press conference was streamed live across the globe. Cameras flashed as Clara Harrington walked onto the stage without makeup, without diamonds, without her usual armor. Just Clara, a mother who had made mistakes. She stepped to the podium and looked directly into the camera. My name is Clara Harrington. I'm not here as a CEO or a public figure. I'm here as a woman who failed to trust the very people who saved my daughter's life. She told the story, honestly, openly, from the kidnapping threat to hiding Sophie, to meeting Daniel under an alias. The pain, the guilt, the realization. She paused. The next part was unscripted. Daniel Hayes didn't know who I was. He didn't care. He took Sophie in because she needed someone, and in doing so, he showed me something I'd forgotten existed: decency, honesty, and unconditional love. The silence in the press room was profound. I am stepping down as CEO of Harrington Tech, effective immediately. I'm dedicating my life to what matters most, not profits, not headlines. Family. She stepped back, eyes glassy, her voice firm. I hope one day Daniel will forgive me. Daniel watched the broadcast from his living room, arms folded, jaw clenched. Eli sat beside him, confused. Is she coming back? Daniel didn't answer at first. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. But the truth was out. The whole world now knew what Clara had hidden, not just her wealth, but her heart. And Daniel realized something too. He hadn't lost everything. He had something no one could take, love that didn't come with a price tag. The only question was, would she come back to claim it? The next few days came and went like mist. Daniel returned to work, but the joy of fixing things felt dull now. Every customer he smiled at, every engine he turned, it all felt like going through the motions. Sophie was gone. Clara was gone. The strange, beautiful chapter they'd stumbled into seemed like it had been closed for good. Until she returned, not with cameras, not with guards, not in heels. Clara drove herself to the garage one afternoon in jeans and a navy hoodie, her hair pulled back and her hands nervously gripping the steering wheel. Daniel spotted her through the window. He didn't move right away. When she stepped out of the car, he opened the bay door slowly. You're back, he said, unreadable. I don't expect forgiveness, Clara said quietly, but I couldn't stay away. I stepped down, Daniel, from everything. I thought I needed control to protect Sophie, but you taught me that love doesn't come with walls and contracts. It just shows up. There was a long silence between them. Finally, Daniel looked at her, softer this time. What do you want? To help, she said. Not with money, with time, with truth, with effort. Daniel motioned toward the garage. Do you know anything about carburetors? Clara smirked. I know how to Google. He laughed, just once. And in that small, quiet moment, they began again. Not as Carla and the mechanic, not as a billionaire and a common man, but as two people learning how to build trust the hard way, bolt by bolt. Weeks passed. Summer settled into the town with sun-kissed sidewalks and ice cream stains. Sophie had returned, not with a legal entourage, but with her own small backpack and a hand in Clara's. Child Protective Services approved a joint custody arrangement. Clara bought a small property just outside town, close enough for co-parenting, far enough for fresh beginnings. No penthouse, no helicopters, just a garden and an open floor plan she painted with Sophie herself. As for Daniel, his garage business exploded, not because Clara funneled money into it, she didn't, but because word spread of the honest mechanic who had once saved a lost little girl and never once asked for anything in return. One day, Clara walked into the shop holding a set of blueprints, not tech blueprints, architectural ones. What's this? Daniel asked, taking them. A community garage/learning center, she explained, where kids like Eli and Sophie and others can learn real-life skills, built from the ground up, no PR strings, just us. Daniel blinked, speechless for a moment. You're serious? I'm serious about this town, and I'm serious about you. They stood there for a moment, the blueprints between them, hands brushing. He reached over, slowly lacing his fingers with hers. I think I'm ready for a new blueprint, too. It was Sophie's birthday. The backyard was strung with paper lanterns and handmade decorations. Clara had insisted on no caterers, just pizza, lemonade, and a chocolate cake she made with Sophie and Eli. Daniel flipped burgers on a borrowed grill. His friends from town were there, along with Clara's assistant Marcus, who surprisingly blended in, holding a plate of deviled eggs and dodging balloon attacks. The kids played tag in the yard, squealing with laughter. Sophie wore a pink dress and a sparkly crown made of pipe cleaners. She looked at ease, loved, whole. As the sun dipped low and twilight painted the yard in gold, Clara stood beside Daniel near the picnic table. "She's happy," Daniel said, smiling. "She's safe," Clara replied. There was a pause. "You know," she added, "when I first came here, I thought I was just getting my daughter back. I didn't expect to find something else." He turned to her, eyes searching hers. "What?" "You." Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Shouldn't that be my job?" She laughed. "Then call this a warm-up." Inside was a ring, not flashy, not gold, but a hand-forged silver band with a tiny engraving on the inside. One family, no secrets. He didn't speak at first, just took her hand. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Daniel slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. The kids ran up seconds later yelling, "Are you getting married?" Daniel and Clara looked at each other, then back at them. "Not yet," Clara said, "but we're definitely staying." And just like that, what started with a chance encounter on a dark road became something neither of them expected. A new life, a bigger family, and a love that didn't care where you came from, only where you were willing to go together.